reaction to
I wasn't surprised because we've been talking about this kind of thing happening. We've said amongst ourselves a few times the worst that could happen would be there'd be a tragedy, and then people would wake up to the mismanagement of this estate. Everything. Fire, safety, security, floor numberings, where boilers were located. 68% of people reporting they felt threatened, harassed, bullied or pressured by the TMO who managed the tenant management organisation of Kensington and Chelsea, who managed the property, or threatened, bullied and forced entry. People had forced entry into their homes.
But regarding the fire safety in particular, what kind of struck you as a problem when you were there?
So what struck me is...
what were you concerned about regarding fire safety in particular?
So a couple of key things were some people had locations of heat interface units, so like boilers, in the doorways to their flats. So who knows what's happened here, but if there'd been a problem with those, they wouldn't have been able to, if there was a fire with those, they wouldn't be able to get in and out of their properties, for instance. Some were located above fuse boxes, so you had water above electricity, which is illegal. I reported that to the Director of Regeneration, Peter Madison, of the Tenant Management Organisation. He did nothing. He asked me to investigate. I have a job, I have a family, and he's asking me, when I'm telling him there are fire safety concerns in the building, and they didn't investigate them. So these are just my experiences, little experiences, but this is a catalogue. Like there was 120 properties, I don't know, 300-400 people, and I went around, knocked on people's doors and talked to people. This is the kind of concern that everyone had.
A lot has been speculated about the cladding that was put on the outside of the building. What do you know about that?
I know nothing about the cladding.
And what about access in terms of fire safety? And some people have said fire alarms, smoke alarms weren't signalled. The first they heard was people knocking on their doors.
Yeah, so I'm saddened, and I'm not surprised again that the fire alarms, if they didn't work, that they didn't work, because that would be typical of how the tenant management organisation, the level of service and how well they ran the building. When we had a trip out with the boiler in January or February last year, and there was no power to the building, so just emergency power. The emergency lighting in the one fire escape didn't work for the first 10 floors, so it was in darkness. And there are people in the building with disabilities, there are elderly people, and other vulnerable people. So the exit, there was one fire escape through the core of the building, just the one, and the strategy as communicated to us by newsletters and the like was to stay put, to stay in our properties and await rescue. Now I used to live on the 21st floor. I know one of my neighbours has got out from the 21st floor. I'm not sure how they got out.
Do you know anyone?
And with injuries, right? They've got out, but...
Do you know anyone who might be still trapped inside?
There's other people on my floor who I haven't heard from.
You've tried to make contact with people, and there are still people who haven't been able to answer calls.
Yeah.
How many people could be inside, do you think? Or how many people does it house?
Well, it's 120 flats, and it's families. It's the majority are families, so there may be the odd person that's one or two people in the flat, but most will be 3, 4, 5 people in the flat. So do the math, that's hundreds.
When you raised concerns in the past about fire safety, how were they answered?
They were generally dismissed, or you get an email back saying that's not a problem. And then I even took things to the Housing Ombudsman, but the complaints, I mean, they have a whole complaints department, the organisation. They have they have so many complaints. They have a whole department for dealing with complaints because the service levels are that low. That's another story. But I even raised complaints to the Housing Ombudsman. But the time involved to do those things, I kind of gave up because it just took months, and they'd fight tooth and nail that you're saying there's a potential fire hazard in your building.